In November, hundreds of people from Silicon Valley gathered at a defense tech conference in Washington, D.C. to urge the Pentagon to collaborate with the tech industry. It was a worthy goal, something the Department of Defense itself has said is essential for deterring and defending against foreign aggression, particularly from China. The event, which brought together some of the most prominent venture capitalists and technologists with top military brass, was the inaugural gathering of Shift, the company behind a popular fellowship program that connected startups and VCs with military personnel. This is an institution that's had an outsized impact in providing the connective tissue between America's greatest entrepreneurial innovators, and the innovators within defense, said Shyam Sankar, the CTO of Palantir, who was a keynote speaker at the Shift Defense Ventures Summit. I was really looking forward to next year. But 5 months later, Shift unexpectedly shut down. The reason? Funding constraints, that led the Air Force's AFWERX Innovation Unit to decline to provide the approximately $2 million annually required to run it, according to an AFWERX memo obtained by Forbes sent to members of the program last week. The move came as a surprise to Shift CEO and founder Mike Slagh, who told Forbes that AFWERX had indicated it planned to continue funding the Defense Ventures Fellowship as recently as January. Though he scrambled to secure new financing, he was unable to do so. He was forced to shutter the program earlier this month. How can industry investors possibly validate any demand signal from the Department of Defense with this kind of disregard for a universally praised innovation program? Slagh, a U.S. Navy veteran, told Forbes, "The adversaries of the U.S. don't need to do anything but stand by and watch us defeat ourselves." Part of Shift's goal was to help defense tech startups bridge the gap they face between initial contracts and grants with the Defense Department, and on-ramps to the type of major contracts typically held by the likes of Lockheed Martin, Booz Allen and Northrop Grumman. With the exception of SpaceX, Palantir and Anduril, few venture-backed defense companies have surmounted the so-called «valley of death», where capital typically dries up before companies are able to move from a pilot to major contract. "I think transition clearly is one of our biggest problems," Defense Department Deputy Secretary Kathleen Hicks has said. The so-called «valley of death», scaling up to fielding and full-scale production is a piece of that. The Pentagon had even recently cited Shift as an example of how it would continue to increase collaborative efforts with the private sector. In a statement, AFWERX said that it did not renew the funding for Shift, due to fiscal constraints and expected funding cuts, in the coming financial year.